Pelicans got a much-needed win last night, 112-105, their first win on a 5-game homestand, and also snapped a 3-game home losing streak, defeating the Utah Jazz. Get a little bit of a recap from that and look forward to the upcoming schedule as well. We'll welcome on Jake Madison, host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast. He's on Twitter at NolaJake. Jake, appreciate the time. As always, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on to talk some hoops.
Absolutely, man. So, look, kind of mentioned it there off the top. Snapped a 3-game losing streak for the Pelicans at home. Their first win on a 5-game home stand as well. It's also their first win over the Utah Jazz this year. What was different last night for New Orleans than in the previous 2 meetings with the Jazz?
You know, I think it's not just the previous couple meetings with the Jazz, the previous couple of games that they've had, too, is you saw better offensive execution late in the game. You know, the Pelicans did have a double-digit lead in this one. The Utah Jazz took the lead in the fourth quarter, but then New Orleans more or less just out-executed the Utah Jazz. They finally got some better spacing. It allowed Zion Williamson to have some room to kind of thrive down low, to attack the basket, to score, and then dish to teammates who then made their shots. I think it's notable that Trey Murphy hit 2 big threes late in this game that really were the daggers that ended this game against the Utah Jazz. They've needed his shooting out there. The spacing has been poor with some of the starters, but you put a shooter like that and good things happen. You saw Zion have room to operate. You saw Brandon Ingram have more room to operate, and it just kind of unclogged everything that had been backing up the Pelicans more or less when it comes to their offense. And you saw them struggle on the road to the Utah Jazz late in games, not being able to execute because they were so one-dimensional, you know, where teams can just focus on Zion, Brandon Ingram. Now with other guys out there, the right kind of combination of lineups, I think you saw them kind of break through and get that victory.
So you mentioned kind of their closing out games, and that has been a big problem. So not just against Jazz, I mean, Timberwolves, the Memphis Grizzlies definitely come to mind there with the close losses. You mentioned, obviously, offensively, is this what's your confidence level, I should say, that they can build off of what happened last night and improve in those fourth quarters?
Yeah, you know, look, the ability to get better is certainly there. You know, when you look at the 14 losses they have right now, 9 of them have been when they've had a double-digit lead over that team, and that team's come back to beat them, right? Memphis being the obvious example in the 2 most recent games that they've played with them. You know, so they have the ability to go out, get these leads, hold on to them, and just win games. But it has been just a spacing issue late in the fourth quarter for this team. You know, the fact is they went with Trey Murphy over Herb Jones in this game to close, and I think that was really important for what they were trying to do as well. They got a little bit healthy and got Larry Nance Jr. back in this game. He was really big for the team, hitting a couple of big shots, a couple of key dunks, and letting them play that small ball style they want. You know, hopefully they can just continue with it. We've seen head coach Willie Green be a little bit stubborn at times, kind of revert to some of those too many defensive guys out there on the court lineups with Dyson Daniels, Herb Jones, Jose Alvarado, just really non-shooters out there that muck up the offense. But the fact is they closed with Trey Murphy. You know, in overtime against the Memphis Grizzlies, he played the entirety of that overtime period too. And so I think if they start to include him more, maybe kind of index his minutes, handcuff his minutes alongside Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram, that's really how they're going to have a breakthrough, because there is a good team here that's kind of just being held back by themselves and what they're doing right now. And if they can figure that out, I think you're going to really see this team take off, and they're going to need to. This has been the easy part of their schedule. In January, it starts to get a whole lot harder, you know, and in the Western Conference where everyone's beating each other up, you need these wins. They are really important. So hopefully they figure this out sooner rather than later. I can't say I'm the most confident, just given what we've seen from head coach Willie Green, but he's starting to make at least some of the right changes that you want to see, and hopefully it starts translating to wins.
In that answer, you mentioned the return of Larry Nance, and that's one thing I wanted to go to next. Why is that so big for this team to have him back?
You know, it allows them to do just what they want to do defensively, which is play small. They like to switch on the perimeter when teams run pick and rolls at them, right? You know, they're not a big rim protection team. Jonas Valanciunas, even as their starting center, isn't a rim protection guy. There's not really another big man on this roster that takes away the rim, a la like a Rudy Gobert or some of those kind of defensive centers in the league. So the way they eliminate rim pressure is they don't let you get there in the first place, and they do that by switching. So you need a big man who can guard, you know, defend a guard, let's say, or can defend a wing. And when they run Jonas Valanciunas, he's just simply not capable of doing that. If a guard gets switched onto him, they're going to blow by him and get to the rim and score, and it leads to bad things for the Pelicans. So with Larry Nance Jr. back, It allows them to play the defensive game plan that they want. I think that's going to be really important for this team going forward. This was the best game we've seen from Larry Nance Jr. probably in the past 2 years. He hasn't scored in double figures or hadn't scored in double figures until I think it was January or February of last year. That's a real long time. So the fact that he was able to come in and make this kind of immediate impact, raise his level of play, I think is going to be really important for this team going forward. Beyond Jonas Valanciunas, there isn't much depth at the center position, even the backup big man spot, right? Yeah. You have Zion who's going to play the 4. He'll play small ball 5 a little bit, but you don't want to run that too much. And then you have Cody Zeller, and that's about it. So it's really Larry Nance Jr. or bust for the Pelicans right now. So getting him back, I think, really just started to get them quality backup big man minutes they've been missing for the past month or so. That has definitely led and contributed to some of the losses that they've had. So getting him back just kind of fills this glaring hole that they have, particularly if he plays at that level of play again.
All right, let's look forward onto the schedule. And, I mean, New Year's Eve in the blender with the Lakers coming to town, that should be insane. Like the vibe in that building, in that city, on that day with that team should be wild. How do the Pelicans avoid what happened in Vegas on Sunday when you have all that fanfare around that matchup in a really important game because a massive road trip looms?
Yeah, look, to avoid what happened in Vegas, is everyone just needs to try harder than they did, right? A 44-point loss is really just show up and have some pride and, do your job and be a professional. Even if you lose by 5 at that point, it's better than the showing that they had in Las Vegas, where Zion took a lot of heat after that game, right? Yeah. But it was really everyone who was bad in that game. No one played well, I thought, other than maybe Herb Jones, who was really the only one trying. So let's go out and, compete for 48 minutes here. But right now the Lakers are struggling a little bit, and this is the type of trap game that you can see for the Pelicans, I think, right? The Lakers have really struggled over the past 10 games. They're probably going to go in with some momentum, the Pelicans will, looking at this game, we can beat them, we're at home. Yeah, as you said, the Smoothie King Center is going to be fired up for this matchup, but they can't take this team for granted, right? Anthony Davis, who's been averaging over 30 and 10, I think, over these past 9 games or so, as the Lakers have slumped, and no one's really talking about him, and he's playing some of the best basketball of his career, and we've seen he loves to play against his former team in New Orleans and put up big-time performances here, so they're going to need to find a way to defend Anthony Davis, who's playing, arguably one of the best players in basketball right now. They don't really have a great answer for that, right? I think you're going to see Herb Jones play on him. I think you'll see Trey Murphy on him. Certainly it'll be Valanciunas at times, but I think that's an incredible mismatch in the favor of the Lakers. It might come down to how well does a guy like Larry Nance Jr. defend Anthony Davis, and can you limit him? LeBron, if he goes off like he did in the in-season tournament game, you lose. There's just not a whole lot you can do. He's one of the best players of all time for a reason, right? But if he beats you, he beats you. You don't want Anthony Davis to beat you. You don't want some of these other role players to beat you, I think. And I think it's about limiting those guys, but it really does start with Anthony Davis. Having Herb Jones kind of press the point of attack is going to be really important, too. When D'Angelo Russell's out there, when Austin Reeves and some of those other guards for the Lakers are out there, press them. Don't let them pass the ball because they don't have anyone that can make entry passes to Anthony Davis. And as a big man, he is relying a little bit on others to create for him. And if you kind of limit that, you can almost take him out of the game without having to defend him too well. So I think that's an area that's going to be really key for the Pelicans in this matchup also.
Last one for you, Jake. Your time appreciated. Of course, Jake Madison, the host of the Locked on Pelicans podcast on Twitter at NolaJake. Lakers and then the Nets. Aside from winning those 2 games and having a 3-2 record in this 5-game homestand, is there something else you can look at and say this was a positive for the Pelicans?
Yeah, I mean, it's adjusting the rotation. I've talked about this on Locked on Pelicans a lot recently. We've seen their just offense has been really struggling. It's been very stagnant. There's very clearly not the right kind of spacing. Even C.J. McCollum said that after that second loss to the Memphis Grizzlies. They need to get better spacing out there to just unlock Zion Williamson, to unlock Brandon Ingram. Those are very good players, and it doesn't feel like they're being put in position to succeed right now. So if you start seeing more of Trey Murphy, when they get Matt Ryan back, seeing him back into the rotation, maybe even Jordan Hawkins taking on a larger role, just to give better spacing to this team. They've proven they can defend at a high level. Now it's time to get the offense going, because I think that's how you're going to win in the NBA in 2023, 2024. That's what they need to do. If we start to see more Trey Murphy, which we are, I think that's kind of a big win for this Pelicans team internally and can lead to a lot of success in the future.
Jake Madison, Locked on Pelicans Podcast. Y'all get subscribed and follow him on Twitter at NolaJake. Jake, we appreciate the time and the insight, man. Thank you. Happy New Year, and we'll do it again soon.
Happy New Year, and thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.